Yeah, I think most of you know me, but for those of you that may not, my name is Meghna, and I live here in Kolkata, India at the moment. And yeah, I do work around the menstrual cycle as well. And I run the company called Shimota, doing sustainable menstrual pads, and just now launching this work, looking more into the spiritual, emotional side of the menstrual cycle, and yeah, what that can mean for us as women in the world. So that's why I'm really excited about today's meeting, because we are going through this chakra system. I'm also trained in yoga, and so we decided to go through the chakra system for these temples, and today is the second chakra, the Swadhisthana, the Sacral Chakra, and that is located in your womb space, and it controls our reproductive organs. So I will be sharing throughout the day today about more of the menstrual cycle awareness work that I do, and emotional and spiritual sides of the menstrual cycle. So excited for that. And I also just see that my internet has been going low and high. So if at any point I get disconnected or you have trouble seeing or hearing me, let me know also. Yeah, so let's just, all of us, we can just, to center ourselves here, we'll just start with just a few breaths. So if you want to go ahead and get comfortable and close your eyes. We're just going to take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a second. And then exhale through your mouth. And again, a deep inhale through your nose. Hold it. And exhale through your mouth. And take another deep inhale through the nose, the biggest breath you have taken all day. Hold it. And exhale through your mouth, releasing all tension, all worries, and coming into the present. And come back to normal breathing. You can breathe your eyes open. Yeah, so we do these meetings on the new moon, or around the new moon. So the new moon for us here in India was yesterday morning, and for those of you in the States, it was Thursday night, I believe. And this new moon was located in Cancer. And I love finding these connections that Cancer is the ruler of our emotions and our feelings, and is also a sign of water. And the connection there is that our sacral chakra is also ruled by the element of water, and is also the seat of our emotions and our feelings. So this meeting feels very apt to be connecting those things together, our menstrual cycle awareness, our womb space, with our emotions and our feelings. So yeah, when we talk about the sacral chakra, and like I said, with the root chakra, there are archetypes. And so the archetypes for the sacral chakra are When it is out of balance, the archetype is the martyr. Themselves that gives up all of their self to be giving to others and to, that saying, fall on their sword, becoming the martyr. And whenever this chakra is in balance, it is the Empress. So one of flourishing and creativity and the chakra. And so that's also the epitome of the Empress, is this feminine energy. So if your sacral chakra is out of balance, here are some things that you might experience. A feeling of isolation or loneliness, rigidity, not being able to be flexible. You might have fertility issues or sexual problems. You might experience a lack of joy or pleasure, sensuality in your life. You can also have creative blocks that don't let you move through life creatively. You can also have hormonal imbalances. It can show up as excess indulge or addictions. And also the energy, emotional energy, with it comes guilt and neediness and unforgiving. Those are signs that your sacral chakra could be out of balance. When we can bring it into balance, we often feel very intimate. It's easy to create intimacy with our family and our friends. There's a fluidity to it, a flow of life that we can just move through life easily without much worry or care, and be able to creatively problem solve as things come up in our lives. If you are very healthy with your sexuality and your fertility, if your menstrual cycle is healthy, then your sacral chakra is balanced. If you feel an abundance of joy and pleasure, if you can create and express that creativity easily in the world, and if you find yourself to be in a space of feeling very compassionate and very forgiving towards others, those are signs that your sacral chakra is in balance and you are embodying the archetype of the Empress. So I thought that we could, with the sacral chakra, we will start with a short guided. We will experience what it's like to enter our womb space as a bowl of water. And there will be a space to share after the guided meditation if anything came up for you during that time. So if you can you can do this meditation actually standing up. There is a bit of movement if you want to at the end of the meditation. If you don't feel comfortable with that, or you're not able to stand, you can do it sitting down as well. I will do it sitting down just so you'll be able to hear me, but feel free to go ahead and stand up while you are doing it. And nobody can see you, so don't worry about what you look like doing this. So yeah, if you just start by standing or sitting in a comfortable position, making sure your spine is long and your head is above your shoulders above your hips. And we're just going to start by closing your eyes. And if you want to, you can cup your hands. I should have told you before you close your eyes, but if you want to cup your hands in a bowl shape, abdomen, where your womb space is. Then you can go ahead and close your eyes. Just begin by taking deep breaths in and out through the nose. Bring your awareness down to your womb space, to your pelvic bowl, and imagine it as a cup or a bowl that's holding water. But this water, it's dirty water, and it's stagnant. It might be a brown color, or it might be green. There might be things growing in it. Just whatever comes to your mind whenever you think of dirty water. Imagine that in your pelvic bowl. And as you are imagining this dirty water, what feelings and emotions are coming up for you? Don't put any judgment on them, just allow them to arise. No need to hold on to the feelings, just let them come and let them go. And as the feelings come, and you're imagining this dirty water, maybe it's bringing up something somebody has said to you, or something somebody has done to you that has made you feel this way, these emotions that you are experiencing. Any judgment to them, just become aware of them and then release them. I want you to draw your attention up into your heart space. If you want, you can place one hand over your heart as the other stays in the womb space. Now, as you look at your heart space on the inside, I want you to imagine it like the sun. Your heart is the sun, and it has golden rays shining. Allow these golden rays to shine into your pelvic bowl of water. And notice when the shining ray touches the water, it becomes crystal clear and blue. Send more rays down into the water, seeing where every ray is touching, it is becoming crystal clear blue water. And as more and more rays are infusing the water, the whole bowl becomes crystal clear. There is no dirtiness left. There is no brown or things growing in it. Your water almost looks like ice. It is so smooth and clear and clean. And as the rays continue to soak into this bowl of water, the water begins to fill the bowl. It starts to fill it. And if you want now, you can begin to move back and forth. If you're sitting, you can just rock back and forth. If you're standing, go ahead and move your hips back and forth. And feel that water begin to flow in the bowl. Feel it begin to dance in the bowl. Now I want you to notice your feelings now. What emotions are coming up for you when you see this shimmering, dancing water? Not putting any judgment on the feelings, just becoming aware. What feelings can you name? As you continue to move and allowing this water to dance and move with you, allow the water to rise. It's rising, and it begins to overflow the bowl, overflowing your cup. And as the water begins to fill the rest of your body, you feel this crystal clear, shimmering blue water is beginning to flow throughout your entire body. And as it begins to flow and move, it's almost like the water is moving you, and you are allowing it to guide you. How are you feeling? What emotions are coming? And as you slowing down, still feeling the movement, but coming to stillness. Place one hand on your womb space, one hand on your heart. And just give thanks, give gratitude to this body that you have. You're going to take a deep inhale. Exhale through your mouth. Take another deep inhale. Exhale through your mouth. And the last breath, take a deep inhale. And exhale through your mouth. You can slowly breathe your eyes open, coming back into the space. And if anybody would like to share anything that came up during that meditation for you? Any of the emotions or feelings that came up? Or anything really you would like to share? You can either unmute yourself and share, or you can type it in the chat box and share with us. And if you don't want to share, it's also right. Thanks for sharing, Elizabeth. If you're not able to read the chat box on the side, if not being able to come into touch with our feelings can also be a sign that our sacral chakra is out of balance. Feeling isolated from our feelings and our emotions can be, a sign to maybe get in touch with our womb space and see what our womb space has to speak into that for us. And with that, I'll go into sharing more about the menstrual cycle awareness, because that is a practice in which we can learn how to listen to our womb space, listen to our menstrual cycle, and learn from it and what it has to offer us and how it influences the many different aspects of our lives. So if you're not aware of the term menstrual cycle awareness, it is basically a mindfulness tool that helps us to become aware of our cyclical nature as women. And the patriarchal society that we live in is very linear. And so we are taught when we're growing up in school or, at jobs where we have to be there from 9 to 5, or really in pretty much most aspects of our lives, we are taught to live in this linear world. And most of the time it means to be in a masculine energy in that linear world, always told that we have to go, 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 and that we always have to get things done. When in reality, as cyclical beings, we were not made that way. Our bodies were not created that way, to be always on the go and always getting things done in the patriarchal sense of getting things done, which means in the outward sense, our yang energy. So I like to call menstrual cycle awareness my middle finger to the patriarchy, because it is allowing me to embrace my cyclical nature and to flow with that energy that it gives me, depending on if it's high or low. So fortunately, I'm lucky enough that I'm self-employed and I can create my schedule around my cycle, and others do not. And so more creativity has to come in for that, but it's possible no matter where you are, to be able to at least start thinking cyclically, and then seeing where different points in your cycle you might need different things. So if we start with the whole of the menstrual cycle, as most of you will know, that the menstrual cycle is on average between around 24 to 35 days. In that range can be seen as normal. And within that cycle, there are two phases that we experience. There is an outward energy and there is an inward energy. So the time from the day we end bleeding until through our ovulation time, that is known as that's the yang energy, our outward energy. And then the time from after ovulation, the whole way through the menstruating phase is known as the yin energy, or the inward energy, when we turn our focus inward. And then with those two phases, they're broken up each into two phases. So, and which is what you'll hear mostly when we talk about the physical cycle, being 4 distinct phases. So the first being menstruation, when you are actually bleeding, and the second being pre-ovulation, which is the time after bleeding, leading up to ovulation. Then ovulation as the time when the egg is being released and you're ovulating. And then after ovulation being the luteal, or the premenstrual phase, leading up until the first day you begin bleeding again. And each one of those 4 phases has a distinct energy to it, and it can vary from women to women, but there's some qualities that are pretty consistent with most women. And in the school I was taught, we see those 4 phases as seasons, but the seasons are based on the Western seasons, the Western 4 seasons that we experience: the winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And here in India, we have the 6 seasons. So I haven't quite figured out how to, or at least in the Bengali culture, we have 6 seasons. So I haven't quite figured out how to put the menstrual cycle awareness into 6 seasons, but I'm working on that to try and figure out how it's connected for me. But if anybody else who's familiar with a different set of seasons has insight into that, I'm very, very interested. If you don't connect to the idea of 4 seasons, you can also connect to the moon cycle, to the lunar cycle. So if we talk about menstruation, and menstruation, the menstrual phase starts with day 1, which is the very first day that you have a full bleed. So a lot of people experience spotting before you actually have a full bleed. That's considered the end of your previous cycle. Day 1 starts the day that you have a full bleed. And so from day 1, oh, actually, the inner winter season can actually start at the end of your previous cycle, because that's when your energy is calling you in. And like Kavya said, she's at the end of her cycle, and so she's saying she has low energy. Her body is calling her in to be more self-reflective and to slow down, and prepare for her menstruating days that are coming. And so those days will be about day 27 of your previous cycle until about day 5 or 6. And it depends on, if you have a longer cycle, it might be day 34 until day 6. But the end of your last cycle into the beginning of your first cycle will be the menstruation phase, the inner winter phase, and that's also the new moon phase if you're using the moon. To go with all of those energies are combined. During this phase, like I said previously, is the time where we're called to turn inwards. And it can be a time that we call it the 1%. And you might think in your head all of the work that I do, all of the family that I take care of, that it's not possible to take 2-3 days off and just focus on myself and do self-care during that time. And so the challenge in that is to find the 1%. What is the 1% more that you could give yourself during that time? Whether it's just stopping and drinking a cup of tea, a cup of cha, or it could be just sitting down for a couple minutes and writing something you are thankful for. It could be simply closing your eyes and taking, a few breaths to bring yourself into the present time. Whatever that 1% might be for you. And if you have the luxury to make your own schedule and schedule your own time, highly recommend to schedule time off during the first couple days of your cycle. And yeah, because it's a call to be still, to not exert too much energy. And usually we'll find if you exert too much energy and there's too much outward energy during the menstruation phase, then the rest of our cycle can be quite difficult, and the bleeding in the next cycle can be quite difficult. So really this time of menstruating is a time to set us up and prepare us for this cycle that is coming ahead. It is a great time to set intentions. It's always on day 1 or day 2 of my cycle is always when I get out my journal and I set my intentions for the coming cycle and reflect on those throughout the cycle. And during menstruation is a time where our intuition is heightened. And so coming into setting those intentions, we can be very intuitive into how we're feeling, how we're doing, what we are intuiting is going to come in the future for us. One of my favorite practices I'll just share during my menstruation time is to do yoga nidra. And it's very easy on my body because you get to lay down, and it's the yogic sleep. So I'm just allowing my body to soak in the sleep during that time. I would love to hear anybody wants to share things they do for self-care during their inner winter or their menstruation phases. We're also sharing how you experience that. If you experience a lot of pain or you have difficult bleeding, and there's also ways that you can try and understand what that means for you emotionally and physically. So yeah, if anybody wants to share just how they experience the phase of menstruation, love to hear it.
Hi.
Hello.
So with me, actually, it gets really painful when I don't pay attention to my body. So I observed recently that when I like ignore, like I don't remember my cycle and I stay busy with everyday happenings and all that, then I get a very painful cycle. Then like the first 2 days are really painful. So if I give my body proper rest and I take proper care of myself, then like it's better.
Yeah, what do you have any specific practices that you do to take care of your body and come back to yourself?
Yeah, so on first day, usually I try to just take rest. I don't like if I try not to move much, but these days I've been observing that like whenever I travel, like it's just getting very abruptive. My cycles, they're not like following a pattern. So like I travel and it starts during those days. So I'm not able to follow that like for now because of all those emotional and physical turbulences which has been happening. That could be one of the possible reasons I have been thinking about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
So Elizabeth shared that she had a really hard time with cramping before, but then after she gave birth to her daughter, it isn't anymore. Yeah, actually, whenever you go through pregnancy and have birth, your hormones can go on a different, can either become very unbalanced if they were balanced before, or can become balanced if they were unbalanced before. So it sounds like, yeah, giving birth actually created some more healthy balances in your hormones. Something that just happened to me, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen the story. I think I shared it on Facebook as well in my, on my business page, but um, I have a hard time with cramps as well, and they used to be really bad when I was young, and they haven't been quite as bad. I was on the birth control pill for about 15 years and then went off about 4 years ago now. I have been off of hormonal birth control, and just my last bleed that was 17 days ago. I had the worst cramps I've had since I was younger, since I was about 14 or 15. And I was really confused why that was happening, and all of the work that I do around this, and the awareness that I have in taking care of myself and my body around my menstrual cycle. And I realized that it was part of my pride. I was taking pride in just um, allowing the pain to be there, and seeing how tough I could be to push through the pain and not ask for any help from anybody, which my mom can laugh at that. She knows me very well. And so it was really, really bad cramping, and I was, you know, on the floor in the fetal position under the shower at one point. And finally, I decided that I needed help, and I needed an ibuprofen. As much as I try not to take medicine. So I called my partner, and I asked him to come over and buy me some ibuprofen and bring it to me. And as soon as I got on the phone, and as soon as I called him, my cramps reduced by 90%. And when he got here with the ibuprofen, I didn't even need to take it anymore, because my cramps were completely reduced. So it's like just very interesting how, you know, it's not always a physical thing. It's often tied to our emotions, and especially with our sacral chakra, being the energy behind our menstrual cycle, that being tied to the emotional side of it as well. So that's something that came to my awareness personally for me. And if you spend time with your pain and cramping or other symptoms you might have throughout the cycle, you can often find that there is some sort of emotional link to those as well. Yeah, so then the time after after you start bleeding, then is the inner spring time. And that is usually from about day 6 to day 11 or 12, depending on when you ovulate. The inner spring phase is what you also think of as the spring in the season, where things are, you know, the frost has melted and things are beginning to blossom. You start seeing the first tiny shoots coming up out of the ground. There's a tenderness to it, and innocence to this phase. It can also be very playful in this phase, and it's also can be very creative, and envisioning. A lot of visioning can happen. And that's sort of the superpowers that you can get during that phase, but it also has a shadow side to it as well. And that usually comes if we try and do too much too soon. So, you know, after your period is finished and you start to begin feeling some of those energies come back, it can be very easy to jump straight back in to everything 100%. And oftentimes, like, our body just does not like that. It likes to ease into it. So that can be the vulnerability if you're not aware to sort of take it slow in those first few days while you're getting used to the energy coming back. Yeah, it's also a time that the intentions that you set during menstruation, or the visions that you got during menstruation through your intuition. The spring phase is when they can start to become manifested in your life, and you can begin to put in place things to get the ball rolling for that. It's a time to experiment, try things out, and see if they're working for you or they're not. You have some energy now, so that you can spend time in different areas of your life experimenting and playing, and just taking it really light. It's not a serious phase of the cycle. It's a really light phase of the cycle. Yeah, and just imagine it as also like a newly hatched chick that's coming out of the egg. It takes a lot of work to crack that shell and to get it to the point or the chick is out and ready to take flight. So take it easy during that phase. Don't go all out. And then that leads into the inner summer phase, which is about day 12 through day 19. Mine usually goes a bit longer. I have a bit longer cycle, so mine usually goes to about day 21, 20 or 21. And this is the time of your most energy, your most outward energy. It is the time of ovulation, and so it's also the time that you will most likely feel more sexually aroused and being able to experience more pleasure as well, because your body is ovulating, and that's what it wants at that point. And also in the emotional side of things, you usually have a lot of optimism during that time, a lot of gratitude for the things around you, and a lot of, you can experience a lot of pleasure in the different things in your life. And I cramp during ovulation. Yeah, cramping during ovulation can be experienced, and I have not experienced that myself, but I find it interesting that I've heard from other people that if you're doing too much during your bleed time, that your body has gotten to the point during ovulation that it's sort of like a burnout symptom, that your body is calling you to come back. And to take that time to slow down again, because you didn't slow down in the beginning of the cycle. So you can work with that and see if it makes sense for you there. It's also the time that you usually have the most energy for connections and for other people. And so if you're able to make your own schedule, that's a great time to schedule time out with friends, or to schedule meetings with work that create a lot of energy to be talking with other people. And it's also your most productive time. So often you'll find days during your ovulation time, during your inner summer, that you can just get everything done on your to-do list, and it's not really, it's like a breeze. You just kind of flow through it, and you're not tired at the end of the day. You just, you feel energized by getting things done and being productive. It's a good time. It's also a good time to say yes to things. Maybe, something came up for you during your menstruation time, during your inner winter, and that's a good time to say no. And it's a great thing to say no, but I can do it in 10 days, or no, but I can do it at this point, and then saying yes to it during your ovulation phase. When you'll have more energy and connection to do those things. Then the last phase, going into the inner autumn and the luteal premenstrual phase, which gets a bad rap, but I have to admit that I actually quite enjoy this phase. So this can be from day 20 through till day 27, 28, depending on how long your cycle is. So the superpowers of this phase are that it's very easy to speak your truth. If you've noticed, you might lose a bit of your filter during this time, during the week leading up to your period. But a lot of truth comes out during that time. And if you pay attention to what's coming up for you during that time, it might be, you know, a little bit easier to filter that in, because there's not much fluff about it. It's very direct. It's also a great time to do editing work or to do cleaning, organizing. It's a very easy phase to get things in order, because your body knows that it's going to be bleeding. Things are in order before that bleeding time comes and before the time that you come back to rest again. It's also a very good time for discernment. If you have any decisions that you are trying to make, it's a good time to take space up in that luteal phase, in your interautumn, to process that and come to a decision. It's very easy to see clear lines between the things you are trying to decide from. The shadow side of the premenstruum interautumn phase is that you can become very critical, and we see it most as our inner critic, critical towards ourselves, and it's it's a time because that filter has fallen away and you're able to see the truth. But when it goes to being critical towards yourself and towards other people that you are in relationship with during that time, and that's a time that you need to be soft with yourself. If you notice your inner critic beginning to rear her head, and I've given my inner critic a name, and I call her out when I hear her, particularly during my premenstrual phase, and I've found that especially helpful to really call her out by name and become aware and conscious that that is my inner critic speaking that to me, that it's not my true self. So I found that very helpful. Also during this phase, it's very easy to move through obstacles and to kind of tackle those icky jobs that you don't like doing through the rest of the cycle, but they tend to be a bit easier in the premenstrual. So if there's something you just not really looking forward to getting done or to doing, but you know you have to do it, like paying bills or something, it's best to do if you can do it during your premenstrual phase. It becomes easier to get that done. Also, like a lot of women can experience very difficult PMS symptoms, and as well as that, you know, being a physical inquiry into what is happening with your hormones in your body. It can also be an emotional and a mental inquiry, in asking for feedback on what needs your attention or what needs to change. A lot of times, if our premenstrual is difficult, if there's something in our lives we need to let go of, it is that link to the inner autumn, that where things are beginning to die off, where the leaves are beginning to fall and change color, and maybe there's something in our lives, or even if you know, we don't experience difficult PMS, it is a time in the cycle to become aware of things that are not serving us anymore, and what can we release, what can we let go of. So I'm interested to hear also if anybody, if you experience difficult PMS symptoms or anything like that, and what it might be. As I said before, my inner critic is really loud during my inner autumn phase, and she becomes a little bit difficult to deal with sometimes. So anybody else have either physical or emotional things that come up for you during during your PMS time and you'd like to share. Yeah, so I think that one of the first steps that you can do if you're interested in diving more into the work and doing the work for yourself, you know, I might sit here and say all of these superpowers and all of these vulnerabilities with different phases of the cycle, but ultimately it's your body, and your body is going to do what your body is going to do. And so it might look differently than what I'm sharing, and the only way that you can understand that is by becoming aware of your own body and your own patterns and what is happening within you. One of the best ways to do that, if you have a few minutes at the end of every day, I have a journal in which you just write down pretty easily the 4 physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And you kind of just scan your day and write down 1 or 2 words about how you felt physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And it can only take a couple of minutes at the end of every day, and it's not a big time commitment, but you'll notice if you start, I like to challenge people to do this for at least 3 cycles. And at the end of 3 cycles, and look back over the cycles and compare the different days with one another. And you'll start to see a pattern. And many people can pinpoint specific days in which certain things happen. I know for me, day 5 is a day that I will almost always get into a fight with somebody, get into an argument with somebody, because I'm very sensitive during day 5, and it's usually because I've decided to go outward, spend my outward energy too much before I'm ready. And so as I put myself out there, I get hurt very easily, and then it becomes an argument. So I'm much more conscious of that now, and I know that when day 5 comes around, that I take care of myself a little more and move a little more slowly. So if you're interested, I would, just make that challenge for you. Just commit yourself to saying, okay, for the next 3 cycles, I'm going to just write down these things at the end of every day and see if there's any patterns that come up for me throughout the cycle. And Kavya wrote down that I become extremely self-critical and end up with a lot of self-pity. At times it is good because I say things that I should have but have never said before. But at times I end up hurting people who are close to me. This is what PMS does to me. Yeah, that's so true. That our inner critic, it can rear its ugly head, but it also has the superpower of saying things that need to be said. So it's just becoming aware of those things, and if it's hurting other people, then becoming aware of how to be a little bit more sensitive during those times for your relationships with other people, and sensitive to yourself, because we are usually the hardest on ourselves before we are on anybody else. Yeah, I was going to speak a little bit about if you're wanting to dive more into the physical side of your cycle and tracking your cycle, either for fertility reasons or you can, what I really love is that through physically tracking your symptoms, you're able to see if you're ovulating or not. And you can then line it up with your journal practice. And if you see that maybe during your inner summer, you know, it looks different than what I had expressed, and you're not feeling very outwardly and energetic, or, you know, different phases feel not like spring, or not like autumn, or not like summer. And you don't really know that you're not ovulating unless you are actually testing yourself using ovulation strips, or doing trackers to track your temperature and your mucus to see if you are actually ovulating. So what I do personally, tracking my physical cycle, I use the fertility awareness method. And basically what it is you have a thermometer, and you can buy a pretty cheap basal body thermometer. And I'm not sure where those would be available here in India, because I got mine in the States. But it's basically just a thermometer that counts 2 decimal points after, or 2 digits after the decimal point. And all you have to do is basically you take your temperature every morning, and you try to do it at the same time every morning. So you would set an alarm clock for the same time every morning. And your basal body temperature will read after at least 3 hours of sleep. So you want to get at least 3 hours of sleep before you take your temperature in the morning. So that's one physical sign that you can take. And the second sign is the cervical mucus, and or what some people call the discharge that comes out throughout your cycle. And as you've probably seen, that it comes in different consistencies. And the main categories that come are usually, so when you're menstruating, you're bleeding. And then after menstruation, you can have a few dry days, or you can go straight to it's a sticky consistency. So it's more like a sticky gum. And if you put it on your fingers, they kind of stick together, or it'll clump together in clumps. And then that will move into a creamy mucus, which is more like lotion. And when you put it in between your fingers, it's very smooth and lubricant, but when you go like this, it has no stretch to it. It's just lotiony. And then moving into ovulation is when you get an egg white consistency, and it's pretty much exactly how it sounds. It is egg white. And when you have it in your fingers, you can stretch it, and it'll stretch and connect just like an egg white in between your fingers. And that's your most fertile time, whenever you have the egg white mucus. And so if you're trying to conceive, that's a good time to try and conceive. And if you're not, that's definitely a time to stay protected. And then after ovulation has happened, your cervical mucus will usually dry up again, and then it'll be dry for the rest of your premenstruum until you begin bleeding again. So that's the second sign. And the third sign, which is not extremely important, but can also tell different things physically, is to check your cervix. So your cervix actually changes throughout your cycle depending on your hormones. So it can be either high, medium, or low. It changes the height throughout the cycle, and it also changes whether it feels soft or hard or open or closed. But it's your physical signs can be very accurate just doing the temperature and doing the cervical fluid checks. And so basically it's just, for me, I temp every morning, and then I have an app. I use the Kindara app, Kindara. And I put that temperature into my Kindara app, and then just throughout the day, I check my cervical mucus, and during the fertile times, it's usually on my underwear. As I go to the bathroom, I can see it. And here in India, since I don't use toilet paper anymore. I use water, and so I'll usually check it after I wash myself. Then I will actually do an internal check. And check on my finger what kind of cervical mucus I have that day, and then I'll also put that into the app. And I've been doing this for about a year now, and I know without a doubt, because your temperatures are low during your winter, spring, and summer phase, and then they raise during your inter-autumn phase, during your premenstruum. If your temperatures do not rise, that means that you did not ovulate. And so it's a very good indicator to know if your hormones are balanced, if you're actually ovulating. And it's been really helpful for me to line up that physical practice of actually seeing my physical signs that I'm ovulating or not, and lining that up with my journaling practice to look at my emotional, mental, spiritual side and how they are lining up, because it's very, very linked to our physical hormones and how they are working in our body. If that's, it might sound really overwhelming right now, and that's really understandable. There are a lot of books you can read on it. The book that I have learned from is called Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Tony Weschler, and it's extremely helpful in the physical side of learning how to do the fertility awareness method. And also, if it's just really overwhelming but you're wanting to learn more, I will also run sessions with you to walk you through how to get you started and to do that for you. So you can contact me either email or Facebook, or however we are connected, if you're interested in that as well. And I think just for me personally, being able to see all of the connections and becoming very aware of my cyclical nature, because my body physically changes in a cycle, and my body emotionally changes in a cycle, and it mentally changes, it spiritually changes in a cycle. And once I became aware with that, I became able to move through life much easier. I didn't have to force myself to try and fit in this linear pattern anymore, because I knew my pattern was not linear. It's cyclical. So I think it's, for me personally, it's been a very freeing and liberating experience to do that. And I had one more practice, but I think I will save it to share in the Facebook group, in our Facebook group. If you're not a part of yet, just search for Lunar Temple, and you should be able to find the group there. I will probably share that practice it's a creative journaling practice, and I will share that in the Facebook group there. I'm wondering now, I'll just, for the last few minutes before we close up with our affirmation at the end, if anybody has any questions about menstrual cycle awareness and or tracking your cycle, or yeah, what that could look like for you, or any observations that you've already seen being a cyclical being in this patriarchal linear world. Go ahead and want to share with us. I'd love to hear or answer any questions you might have. And as I shared in our last call as well, that if you know women or working with women that are in menopause, or if you are in menopause yourself, that it's easier if you can track with the lunar cycle. And so, like I said previously, that all the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle will link up to a lunar cycle phase. And so the new moon being linked with inner winter, the waxing moon being linked to inner summer, the full moon being linked to ovulation, and the waning moon being linked to inner autumn. So you can track your track or journal your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual around the lunar cycle if you are in menopause, to continue with, because you're still a cyclical being even if you are not bleeding, or if you're experiencing women who do not have a period at the moment through either hormone disbalance or coming off of hormonal birth control or whatnot. They can start tracking by using the moon before they get their period back. Anybody have any comments or questions? I'm also wondering if anybody's, if you're actually interested and you're going to try the journal practice, the awareness practice, and just tracking those signs, even just the journaling, even if you don't want to go into the full physical charting, just charting your feelings mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Kavya. Thanks for this. I have a few kids coming here, so we're going to fully participate. I had to mute myself. I'm hoping that you will share the recording and would definitely like to go through this again without instructing Michelle. Post my career people. Yeah, no problem, Kavya. That's totally understandable with our, we all have crazy lives, and the recording will go out in an email. So as long as you're on the email list, then you should get on the, if you're not on the email list, or if you're on the Facebook invite, then you just sign up for that MailChimp email that I posted today. There's a little button on the top that says to subscribe, so you can subscribe there.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I'm glad you put in the part about menopause because um I like listening to everything and correlating it to when I was actually having my period. A lot of the things that you talk about that I went through, but now I know I still have a lot of ups and downs, but my ups and downs are on a much lower level. Like I don't have, as many highs, lows as I did when I was having my period.
Yeah.
But it'll be kind of nice for me to go back out and watch it and tying it to the lunar part because
Yeah.
I know it had to be tied to something because I still know there's times, even though they don't go as high as they do, that I feel much more energetic and much better. And then there's other times when I'm just, not feeling as great. So for me, it'll be interesting to tie that into the lunar part going forward and looking at that. So
Yeah, definitely.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
One of like the most fascinating things I've ever read about the menstrual cycle was that before artificial lighting was invented, before electricity was invented, almost all women had their periods on the new moon. And so there's like a direct connection between our cycles and the new moon. And just because of artificial lighting, our hormones have become have came off that system because we're not sleeping and waking with the sun and the moon. Our whole bodies are off of that rhythm of the nature. And I have heard, though, also, if you're interested and linking yourself up to the new moon, one practice that you can do is actually just go outside at night and away from artificial lighting if possible. It's a little bit difficult here in Kolkata. I don't know about where you are all at, but if you're able to just actually go in the moonlight, that it can have an effect on your cycle and can start to line yourself up. I've noticed for myself that I used to bleed around the new moon until it's been almost a year now. About last year this time, my cycle switched to the full moon, and what I heard about that is that when all of the women before electricity were bleeding on the new moon, that there were a few women who were ovulating at that time who were known as the healers, as the caretakers of the community, because they were the ones that were taking care of the rest of the women as they were menstruating. And so I found that interesting because that's also when I started to do more of this work and to become a person holding space for you all and for other women experiencing this work in menstrual cycle awareness. So there's lots of different connections. That the more time you spend with your cycle, the more things you'll notice, and a lot of it is very nuanced, and so it can be hard to catch if you're not spending time with it. So yeah, Elizabeth said she's going to try and journal. It'd be great. We can compare journals together. Yeah, I also a practice that I do at the end of every cycle. I will read back through my journals that I had done for that cycle and take notice of the things that came up for me throughout the cycle, particular days that were difficult or particular days that were really lovely and wonderful, and then allowing that to then shape how I want to look at the next cycle moving forward. And that's been a really good practice for me, knowing that I'm a cyclical being and just focusing on the cycle that's ahead of me and not trying to get too far into the future. And also like with my business as well, that's how I plan. That's how I plan my business is I plan it in cycles, not in months or in years. So if, yeah, you're interested in planning around your cycle as well, that's also a great place to start, is the journaling, to sort of see when you might have the most energy to do something or the least amount of energy, and to schedule in some rest and self-care time during those times. So we're almost out of time. And we're going to close, just like we did last time, we're going to close with an affirmation that is for our sacral chakra and our menstrual cycles. So if you want to, you can listen to this. Before I do that, Kavya just wrote. She wrote, I would like to mention something funny, intense, and related. Today I had announced a womb healing meditation and 4 women registered, but the first participant to turn up was a guy who really wanted to explore this. I didn't want to ask him to leave knowing his deep interest, so I had a womb healing with 3 women and 1 man. I was imagining it to be stupid, but he loved it and said that it helped him connect more. All the women found the experience refreshing. Wow, that's really great to hear, Kavya. I find it interesting. The first thing that came up for me whenever I read that was that also men in our society, in the patriarchal society, they're always asked to be in the masculine space, and they don't have the freedom to explore their feminine side, their inward energy, their yin energy. And I love that he felt connected more, because that is the feminine energy, the energy that connects us to one another. And you were able to create that space for him to connect with that energy within him, because we all have those yin and yang energies within us, and you were able to create that space for him to tap into that energy. I think that's beautiful, and I wish more men would feel comfortable doing that. So maybe you can start offering an all men meditation in the future. I would love to see that. Yeah, so for our affirmation, if you want to close your eyes, you can go ahead and close your eyes so you're able to soak it in. And I'm just gonna read this over you as you can silently say it yourself, or just soak in the words that I'm sharing with you. Without any fear, I feel all of the emotions that arise within me. My body is sacred. I am a creative and radiant soul. I am passionate about my amazing life. I feel energized every day because I am in perfect health. I align with my cyclical nature. I am unique and joyful. So if your eyes are closed, you can come back. Yeah, so I think just thank yourself for showing up today. And I thank you all for showing up today. And like I said before, go ahead and join our Facebook group if you're not a part yet. And any questions you have about menstrual cycle awareness and anything I shared, and if you go ahead and share it in the Facebook group, any questions or reflections you have, then it would be beneficial for all of us, because when you have a question, there are 10 others or more that have the same question that you have. So that space is there for us to process and question these things, and be community with one another as we find the answers. So great to see you there. And if you are wanting to donate to this work to help me continue to do this work and give time and energy for meetings like this, I will share the donation links in the email that I will send out also with this recording, so that you can watch it whenever you want, and those that are not here live will be able to watch it as well. So yeah, that's all for our time. If anybody has anything else, you can go ahead and share, and if not, thank you for coming, and I will see you again next month, and I will let you know those dates and times when I have them figured out in the next week or so. So you have a good day or good night wherever you are. Thanks for coming.